that you are. We not ashamed.
Hey everybody, welcome to Unashamed. I'm Chris Knight, and I'm here with my good, amazing friend, my comrade, my co-host, Mr. Daniel Clayton. Dan, what's up?
It's totally not fair. You always steal like all the good, titles before I even get to me. But yeah, I'm here with my great friend Chris Knight, and we have some wonderful guests joining us in talking about a thing that is very close to all of our hearts. So Elisha and Mason Clover, thank you guys so much for joining us. And Chris, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, we brought him on, and we're going to be talking about just the amazing week we had this past week at Camp Yeshua. What a blessing it was. Just so beautiful. So we've all been to Camp Yeshua before, several times, and the first thing we want to talk about was Mason Clover, Elisha. What do you guys think was really different about this year? What set this year apart here at camp?
Wow. I think I think this year at camp there was a spirit in the camp from the moment that I arrived until the moment that I had left, and even there was a lot of the same spirit that carried over to B'nai Shalom on Friday night, and B'nai on Saturday with the times of worship that we had there, and I really felt like there was more focus from the youth. I think we were better prepared as a staff this year than we were for last year. Last year was really a transitional year, and while it was an amazing year, there was a lot of great testimonies. It was just more fluid this year. It felt like there wasn't as many bumps in the road. There was really no problems that I know of that arose in the camp with any of the campers, and there's a lot of things we could really go into, but I just think the overarching thing was the spirit in the camp was just it was just fantastic, and it was upbeat. It was intense at times.
It was very sweet. There was a very sweet spirit in the camp this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was a lot more focus on prayer, and a lot more focus on individuals and where they were at and struggles that maybe they were dealing with, that maybe they were bringing from their home life, or even very, very possibly that parents and siblings didn't even know that these kids were wrestling with. And I applaud every one of the adult staff, Ephraim, Chris, Daniel, Elisha, Jamie. There's too many individuals, Rico, Ed. There's just too many individuals who played a vital role. But the one thing from the outside looking in on it is that everybody just seemed to really operate in the gift that the Father had given them, especially in leadership. And they worked just so well together that you knew the Father's hand was upon it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Last year I felt that as well. Being on tribal leader and whatnot, that there was a lot going on. Like I said, transitional. I know there was like some chaos here and there, some things to deal with. And this year, very smooth, very, very smooth. And it was really nice. It was a great week. I enjoyed it. Last year I kind of felt, a little stressed with things going on. But this year, it was really easy to just enjoy and, see the blessing that the Father was doing.
Yeah, and I think, if I can comment just briefly on some of the preparatory work that goes in, the last 2 years, I've been blessed to actually be involved with the process that goes into, almost a year in advance to coming up with whatever the spiritual theme is going to be. And then you've got many people who get involved in writing the lesson plans and just all of that, so that everything works together for whatever the spiritual theme is that the Father laid on the heart. And last year we saw the largest growth as far as the amount of campers that Camp Yeshua had ever had in one single year. And and when you get into that where you grow so quickly, Rico wasn't there last year. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't as many adult staff. And so, I think the spirit was everything that everybody knew. It was going to be a transitional year. And the theme was relentless, that we wanted to be relentless in pursuing our faith with Yeshua and Yahweh. And, I think the Father really gave us that opportunity, but I think what he also showed us while we were being relentless in trying to pursue him during that camp, he also showed us that, we had some vulnerabilities, and not only spiritually as leaders, but in structure and how we worked together and how we planned. And, I really give hats off to Ephraim, because he took a lot
Yeah.
of counsel from a lot of adult staff, from Ed Harris, from people who were there last year, and the things that we saw and the things that with all the new campers that came in, and he really put stuff into play early on this year before we showed up, so that we could really follow the theme, which was we weren't going to worry about what was going on around us. We were going to follow the fire that was before us. And I think that diligence that Ephraim put in that time, and I know him and Lauren spent a lot of hours throughout the year praying and seeking, and Ann does the same on the lesson plans and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. But it really seemed like because they did that, the Father brought the right people in leadership. He brought the right campers. He brought the right structure, and this year there was literally there was not one issue that I heard arise that, which is unusual in any type of event you have, let alone when you put that many teens and young adults in one area.
Oh yeah.
Normally the adults are walking around with their head on a swivel, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a great year. There's really not any words that can accurately describe what I experienced, what I heard from the testimonies of others, and I just feel blessed to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you brought out a couple words earlier of it was very focused this year, and I saw that as well. I was very encouraged because we have a lot of fun at Camp Yeshua. Lots of activities, lots of just time with your tribe, just having a lot of fun, just doing different things. But and of course there are those that came and were not as serious as others. But of course there's always going to be those, and there's always hope for them for the future. But as far as the more serious ones, when it came time to worship, it didn't matter what had happened previously in the day. There was a very distinguishing moment from when you guys, from when the worship wasn't going on and when you guys started worshiping. It was a very distinct moment, and I really appreciated seeing that we're there's a generation that is coming up that knows when it is time to respect and revere.
Yeah, amen. I mean, that's one of the things, at Camp Yeshua, like, I have never seen people, a group of the younger generation that wants to worship like they do at Camp Yeshua. They're unashamed, they are uninhibited, like they worship with all that they are. And that is so humbling to see. And it's honestly inspiring, like, to every single person that's on stage. It's like, we want to be like those people, like we want to be like those kids, like, that are so unashamed to lay everything down and to worship. I mean, it's amazing to behold. And I think this year, it was probably, this is my 4th year that I've been, and this year I think it was the best year that I've ever been, as far as just seeing kids and the people just so hungry for God and so thirsty for Him. It was incredible.
Yeah, Camp Yeshua is definitely my worship highlight of the year. I got to tell you.
Yeah,
for sure,
absolutely.
And I found it very easy to enter into worship this year. A lot of the time, I mean, I still get that thing where, you get nervous about raising your hands because, what are the people around you going to think? But I don't know, this time is just, maybe it's me maturing as well. But the overall spirit, it just made it very easy to just put it all on the line and just worship.
Yeah, there was definitely a spirit of unity in the camp this year, unlike any other year before. And it was it was amazing to see, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I rehash a conversation that took place. You know, Ephraim is really good about when it comes to the evening program and the teaching and the worship. And I mean, you've got guys like Rico Cortez and Ed Harris and Brent Avery, and they're like your main evening speakers, and they prepare messages to be brought forth. And you always want to respect the time of study and teaching. But Ephraim has always done a really good job at kind of just saying, okay, look, this is the general outline, but whatever the Father's going to do tonight, he's going to do. And I know that we actually had a meeting, Ephraim, Rico, Ed, and I, and he was just kind of like, okay, guys, well, you know, you guys kind of get together and figure out what really you want to do, what the Spirit's leading you guys to do tonight. And you guys just really work that out, and whatever the Father wants, you know, that's what we're going to go with during the service. And I remember kind of talking to Rico, kind of talking to Ed, and we were like trying to put some sort of rough outline together, and we really couldn't. We were kind of like, well, you know, maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that, but like it didn't really like flow in the conversation. And so we were all kind of like, okay, well, the Father's going to do whatever the Father wants to do, so let's just see what he does. And that's basically how we left the conversation. And that was Wednesday night, which was one of the major like breakthrough nights for people. In fact, if I'm right in what I heard and what I saw, there was 3 or 4 people who actually gave their life to Yeshua that night inside the camp. And we didn't even play I think we played maybe 2 songs of the actual like 6 or 7 songs we had. And then
going back to what you said, like, I mean, you know, we would go in for band rehearsal, and you know, we would kind of have like an outline of what we're going to do that night, and you know, the songs we were going to play and kind of how everything was going to go. And the last 2 nights, like, nothing that we basically practiced happened, you know, like, I mean, the Spirit just fell, and he basically took over, and, you know, the Father basically just was like, you know, whatever you think that's like preconceived in your mind about what's going to happen, it's not going to happen, you know. And that was amazing to see. Like, that was amazing because like the whole entire team, the whole entire camp, like they were so responding to the Father. And, you know, it wasn't about like what we thought. It wasn't about what Ephraim had planned. It wasn't about any of these things. It was like every single one of us was willing to surrender to what the bigger picture about what God wanted to happen that evening. And, you know, that was incredible because, like, you know, it was amazing when everybody surrendered to see what the Lord could do whenever all of our hearts were for him, you know?
Yeah, all the campers start singing Let It Rain. And
yeah, I know.
Like
we were playing a totally different song.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, that was awesome.
We didn't even have chord charts or anything, and it was just kind of like, we just kind of like halted.
Are you serious?
No. I mean, the campers, I mean, that was, you know, probably 35, 40 minutes into the worship time. And, you know, a lot of the kids had gathered together to pray, and the dance circles had kind of dissolved into more of small groups of praying. And there was some adult staff praying with the kids, and some things that were happening there. And then all of a sudden it was like the whole entire youth just started singing Let It Rain.
I noticed that.
And I mean, it was pretty powerful.
A spirit of unity too. Yeah. Like they were all like in unity singing that. It wasn't just like one person that was randomly, you know, suggesting that they sing that song. Like all the campers together.
Yeah, it happened. It came out of nowhere. It really did. Exactly. Like I was over at the side kind of doing some personal prayer, and I noticed it just out of nowhere. I mean, I know what the chords sound like to that song, but it just, you know, it wasn't kind of really much of a build-up. It just happened. And, you know, since we're on this, I'd really like to publicly commend you guys and all the teachers, because one of the main reasons that the Spirit can flow so freely like that is because there are people in charge that are willing to get themselves out of the way. So great job to you guys, and great job to Ed and Rico and Brent, because, you know, especially, you know, I noticed it with Ed and Rico, just with how the nights played out, that, you know, they had the schedule for that night, and, you know, they very well could have, you know, started to shift it toward their teaching. But no, they really got themselves out of the way and let
Yeah.
the Spirit move. And I really, would just like to make sure everyone knows that, you guys are really
Amen.
awesome.
And that was something that was so, like, incredible to behold, like, to see, Rico and Ed. I mean, they both had teachings that they had prepared for and that they wanted to, speak about. But, like, as soon as the Spirit fell and as soon as they could see where the campers were going, they basically took their teaching and they basically recreated it to go with whatever was going on with the Spirit.
Yeah.
And I think that that's incredible for a leader to be able to see something that's going on in a room and to be able to put aside, whatever they had prepared for, whatever they had prayed about, and to be able to be like, God, like, I'm going to follow you in whatever you do in this room. The last 2 nights, like, it was like worship and teaching. Mason Clover and Ed Harris, like they were playing off each other. Like Ed would say something and then Mason would play a song, and then like it was so amazing to see like the Spirit of God at work, because it was like at that point it wasn't just one person in their ministry. It was like collectively we were a body, and collectively we were ministering, and collectively we were working towards the goal, which is to bring people closer to the Messiah. And it was,
well, it wasn't even Ed and I. The funny thing is I got to see a little bit of well, I guess it's not funny. I don't mean to make light of the situation because it wasn't funny. I hate to do the whole like Pentecostal new like Bethel church laugh or whatever, but that's really like in my spirit what was going on, because I had seen, especially Ed's teaching. I had seen what Ed was going to teach on that night because I helped him move some PowerPoints over. And when there was some of the testimony time and some of the kids were explaining some of the things that they had come into camp with and that the Father had delivered them from, and they were sharing that, some of the kids were actually saying specific, almost word for word, which were PowerPoint slides that Ed had in his teaching. And then the moment where it was like, wait a second, the Father has ordained this before we even walked into this room. I'm pretty sure it was Romans 8 was a scripture verse that I know it was from Romans, but I believe it was Romans 8. And that was a pivotal point in the teaching that Ed was supposed to do that night. And one of the kids got up and they basically said Romans 8. And I remember Ed was standing just off to the side of the stage. And he was looking at me, and I just looked at him, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. What? I mean, it was one of those moments where it was like the Father flat out said to me, and by the look on Ed's face, I won't speak for Ed, but what it looked like from him was like, wait a second. The Spirit was already going to move on this teaching tonight anyways. And he used youth. He used worship. He used Ed. He used everybody collectively in that room to do it. But nobody in that room knew that that's what Ed had the Father laid on his heart to do. And so it was like Ed didn't even have to teach the teaching that night, because it was basically being walked out and talked out by every person in that room.
Yep.
And I looked at Ed, and I've been going to Camp Yeshua since 2008, and I've been blessed to be allowed to serve the kids as a worship leader since 2008. But I can tell you, through all of the amazing worship experiences I've had, through the amazing prayer times and devotional times and things that I could go back and just say were amazing times, that moment, I have never been more in awe of what the Father can do when all his people come together to actually just focus in on him, because that was not the theme of the day. That was not it wasn't tribal conference conversations, but there was no doubt about it that the Father had sent the Ruach HaKodesh in that room that night with a plan and a teaching and a spirit of, this is what I want to accomplish with you all. Because a lot of times people think like, Ed, Rico, myself, Ephraim, Brent, whoever, Elisha, whoever, who get to speak or lead or whatever, they think like, oh, well, we have this plan for the youth, or we have these topics we want the youth to do. But we really go into it, and we really, I mean, part of our prayer as a worship team before the services, we want to be used.
Yes.
Remove anything of us, Father. And this is almost every day. So like you're talking 3-4 days into camp where you should theoretically have had any selfish fleshly things removed. And he just did that. He did that. We just want to be a servant. We just want to be a tool that the Father uses. And this is the first time since 2008 that I can remember where the Father used every single person in that room to move the Spirit in a specific way.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, we could ask, 20 different people what went on in that room, and we'd get, 20 different amazing answers. For me personally, it was just absolutely incredible that I saw, I think it was on the Wednesday, I looked behind me and saw a good friend that I just met, and, I went over to pray for him, and I kind of had in my mind an idea of what I was going to pray for him. But about halfway through it, I found myself saying, Father, let him have compassion, let him have patience. And I kept going, and when I stopped, he stood up and he said, you said the exact same thing that I was asking for earlier today, compassion and patience.
Wow. And
it was just incredible to me that, like you guys are saying, the Spirit had already had that all planned out. And it was just, us letting it, getting out of the way so it could happen. It was amazing.
Oh man, God actually shows up, believe it or not. I mean,
He does.
That's what I love. People get to experience that because that's lacking so much in congregations, in, places where these teens, a lot of these people probably have never experienced anything like that. This whole concept of letting the Spirit move. What does that even mean? Is that a Christian thing, And you get to come here and see it in action, and it's like, oh wow. You mean God actually is who he says he is? You mean he actually does these things? And
Amen.
I'm just so glad that this happens. Yeah,
this year at camp, it was interesting because this was my 4th year that I went to camp, and the 3 years previously, every single year, like I'd had that moment where I broke down, and the Spirit of the Lord just, came and ministered to me, and I was looking for that this year, and it was Wednesday night, and we were on the worship team, and we were playing, and we were singing, and we were worshiping and everything, and I wanted to have that moment, and I just felt like the Spirit of the Lord was like, this year, like, that's not going to happen. Like, you are going to minister, and you are going to see the way that I'm going to touch everybody else in the room. And so, for the first time, when I was at camp this year, I was actually able to have my eyes open, and I was able to see the Spirit of God fall on the kids, because the years previously, like, he came and he ministered to me, and it was life-changing, and I was expecting that this year, and, it didn't necessarily happen. Like, God basically told me, like, this year, it was the other people. It was everyone else in the camp that was supposed to be ministered to, and that I was basically just supposed to sit back and look at his glory unfold. And it was absolutely life-changing. As many times as he has ministered to me, and as that has been life-changing to me, it is almost more life-changing to see him move whenever you get out of the way, and whenever you're not even focusing on yourself and what you need God to do for you. When you look back and when you see him touch the hearts and the lives of all these people, my heart was completely overwhelmed, because, I looked and I saw these people crying, these people raising their hands, and these people, just absolutely worshiping their God with all that they had. And for the first time, like, I was able to remove myself from that, and remove myself from seeing, I was expecting God to minister to me, and I was expecting to receive something, but this time, like, I was able to look out and see what he was doing.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
That was more powerful than anything I've ever experienced. So it was amazing.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. We got much more coming on the second half, so do not leave.
Shalom, everyone, and welcome back to Unashamed. You are here with myself, Daniel Clayton, and also Chris Knight, Mason Clover, and Elisha. We got the A-team here. And we're going to be going into, in this second half, something I actually just taught about on Shabbat and Branson, of things that the youth are going through these days, things we're trying to overcome. And, this year at camp, what was really impressive upon me is that there's no excuses this time going away. With all the teaching, with all the ministering there was, with all the deep worship, with all of the how connected we are, through the internet and various things, there's no excuse this time. We can't let this fire die. And, everyone that's listening, whether you be young or older, we're going to be talking about some of these things that the youth are going through. It is very, very interesting position to be in. So, who wants to jump in first here?
And, well, real quick, before we do, if it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're, running straight to the end in a lot of this great conversation. Elisha, Mason, what are your guys' websites, and where can people, go to find your music and find out more about you?
Go ahead, Elisha.
Okay, so my website is elishaworship.com. And you can find out about my upcoming events and everything like that. And Facebook, too. Facebook is probably what I update the most. You just go there and find Elisha. You can like the page, and you'll be able to keep up with all of the current events and everything that I'm going to. So.
Yeah, and you can check out masonclover.com as well for information on myself and every Friday night on benaishalom.tv, I lead worship there as well. And that's a place where they can watch. And so, Facebook and Instagram and all those fun different places.
Oh, snap.
I'm Pinterest? Sure, but no, I'm not on Pinterest. Well, my wife is on Pinterest, but you can. By the time we talk again, there's probably going to be 100 new social medias to update. So,
very true.
But yeah, just check us out. Hebrew Nations Bookstore, Messianic Marketplace, Hebraic Roots Network. There's a lot of ministries that carry both of our music and support us as worship leaders in that. And so, in all honesty, Elisha, I don't know if I'm overstepping my bounds, but really, try to support those ministries first and foremost, because,
yes.
They help us out a lot, and they open a lot of doors for us into congregations and on the radio and everything. And so, for me personally, I would rather you support, if you're looking to purchase music or whatever, support those ministries first and foremost.
Yes.
It's just one way that we can bless them for the blessings that they bestow upon us.
Absolutely. Because honestly, without people believing in us, we wouldn't be able to do this. Without people
Amen.
being behind us, and without people supporting our ministry, and people, believing in the calling that God has placed on, both mine and Mason's life, we wouldn't be able to fulfill this calling. It's a body effort, it's the body of Messiah that is able to make this, into fruition. And so I completely wholeheartedly agree with what Mason said. Go support those people, and give your time and your support to them, because they're the ones that are helping and aid make this the body of Messiah to grow and to prosper. And it's a beautiful thing for both of us to be able to be a part of these ministries that are so dedicated to the calling of the Father.
Amen. So, that's awesome. So Daniel, what was your thought again, your question?
There's just a lot of things that as I was in Branson this past weekend, one of the things I said was the youth are really in an interesting position these days, to where we are dealing with the things that most youth deal with anyway. What are we going to do for a job? Are we going to go to college and whatnot? But we're trying to plan for a future when we don't know if we're really going to have a future. So there's a lot of things that go with that.
Well, I'd humbly submit to anybody who's listening, we absolutely have a future. And I don't consider myself a youth. I'm the old guy here on this interview. But, one of the things that I know that I've always tried to stress is that nobody's guaranteed a next breath. And so while I believe it's important, and the Father stresses that we are to pay attention to what's going on around us and the signs he's giving us, none of that matters if you are if you're a husband who doesn't love your family, who doesn't support your wife, if you don't take care of your kids, if you're a son who doesn't honor his father and mother, if you're a girl or a boy who isn't honoring the statutes of God. It doesn't matter whether Yeshua is coming back tomorrow in 3,000 years or whatever. You may not breathe your breath to see that. And so you need to live every single moment as if it's your last. And you need to be honoring your king and your father in every breath that you have. And I know that's not easy to do. And, I'll be the first one to admit it's not the easiest thing to do. There's trials and tribulations, but in this movement there's a lot of focus on the study of the Torah, the study of the writings. And while I am in no way diminishing that at all, there's not a lot of talk about some of the big issues that take place in just the flesh and just the daily life. And so as adults, and a lot of times, you've overcome some of those things. You can say, okay, well, I don't have any prone to be an adulterous husband or wife, or I don't have any prone to steal from my neighbor, or I don't have any prone. These are not sins that I wrestle with as an individual or as somebody else. But as a teenager, you're being molded and you're being shaped, and you're trying to come up with your theology and your ideals and your spiritual walk with the Father. And a lot of times in congregations, a lot of times in families, the older generation, fathers and mothers, will stress so heavily a certain theology or a certain ideal, and they'll neglect the fact that has their son or daughter actually given their life to Yeshua as their own decision, as their own choice? Is there an actual spiritual relationship there? Is there a prayer life there? Is there a desire and a life change to study the Word, or is this just going through the motions? And
just to bounce back on what you're saying, at some point, the youth that are raised in this, at some point, this walk has to become our own. This faith has to become what we believe. It has to become what our convictions are. It doesn't have, at some point we have to break away from it being, okay, this is what we've been raised in. This is what our parents have told us. Like, it has to become our heart, and it has to become our passion, and it has to become what we believe and what we are convicted about and what we live for, you know?
God does not have grandchildren. He only has sons and daughters. And
Amen.
just to rephrase what I said earlier, just to make it more clear, it's hard to plan for a future on this earth as it is when we do not know how long this earth is going to be as it is. Just to clear that one up more. And especially right now, for everyone that's listening, if you just came back from Camp Yeshua, these first few days right now are going to set the stage for the rest of the months leading up to the next event. These are the most important days to start to set those habits of, like Mason was saying, are you going to make it serious? Are you going to, as Elisha was saying, make it your own? Or are you just going to go through the motions?
Well, absolutely, because, a lot of times what you hear as an adult staff is you hear things that, from my perspective, are very trivial. You hear that a person is wrestling with something that is very trivial, and it becomes a divisive nature between them and their friends, or them and their parents, or whatever. And they're missing the complete heart of the Torah in the aspect of the application of God's word, when they focus on they're majoring on the minors and minoring on the majors, so to speak. And so it becomes something where it's like they're afraid that, if I say this word, or I pronounce the name this way, or I listen to this type of music or something, I'm no longer saved, or I'm no longer in the blessings, or whatever. And the conversations are so far from the fact that it's like, well, wait a second. How many times a day do you actually go alone and pray to God? How many times a day do you actually open the Word of God? You're more worried about what you're going to do when you go to Sonic with your friends, and are you going to be, this or that? And they're missing the point that if you're not trying to do that in your personal life, if you're not trying to establish a foundation in a relationship yourself, then it doesn't matter what you're going to do there, because you're going to be more prone to fall in those situations if you don't actually have that relationship. If you go in there and everything your parents say and do, everything that they're teaching you is, oh, it's just my parents being my parents. Well, you've already set your relationship up with your parents to be a complete failure, because you're not looking at what the heart of what your parents are trying to do spiritually, and you're already putting yourself at odds with your parents. And that's completely contrary to what the Father's plan is for the family structure and for teenagers. You cannot be rebelling against your parents spiritually and feel like the Father's going to bless you in that. Absolutely not. It just can't happen. Absolutely not. Now, if your parents are not believers or something, well, it's a completely different scenario. But you can't go in and say, well, I don't want to read the Torah portion anymore, or I don't want to listen to Paul Wilbur music, or I don't want to circle dance anymore, or whatever it is. That's ridiculous. And unfortunately, these are things that I've heard. And it saddens me, because if that's the basis of a faith, and it's not just a Camp Yeshua, it's just teens in general, if the basis of your faith is that, oh, I have to listen to this specific Messianic artist, or I have to study the Torah portion this specific way, you have not made a personal decision in how you're going to cooperate with what the Father's trying to do in your life, and you're already at odds with it. So the Father can't work through that.
And you're not going to want to either. Like if this is something that you just do because it's something that you're told to do, or it's something that you feel is expected of you, you're not going to have that heart. You're not going to have that passion. You're not going to have that drive for it. Which is why, like, at some point in your life, like, you have to come to a point where you're like, okay, like, Lord, I'm going to take up my cross and I'm going to follow this path, because this is what I believe, and this is what I believe you have called me to follow. At some point it has to be your faith. It has to be your conviction. It can't be something that you're told to do. It can't be something that people expect you to do. It has to be something that whenever you wake up in the morning, you specifically say, okay, God, like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doing this for you. And it has to become something that you live for. It has to become your purpose, your pursuit in life, versus something that you're expected to do, and versus something that, people just, think that, because you're so-and-so's kid, like, you're supposed to, or because you're associated with this congregation or whatever. And that was one of the things that was amazing at Camp Yeshua. Like, I saw all these kids, and they were so on fire for God. Like, they were, like, their pursuit was Him alone. And, they didn't care. They didn't care what the world thought. They didn't care what, their peers might think about them. Like, their one main goal and their focus was Yahweh. And,
in these days ahead, that needs to be the continued focus. Yeah. When the teens go back, when the adult staff goes back, it needs to be the focus, because ultimately, if you look at this movement, if you look at Christianity, Judaism, any type of religion, there is always going to be things that people don't agree upon, or interpretations, opinions, whatever. That's not the focus of Camp Yeshua. The focus of Camp Yeshua is that at the end of the day, you're getting ready to become an adult in the age of accountability, and you need to decide where you stand, like we've talked about before, in your relationship with God and who Messiah is. I mean, those are all big things. I mean, in this movement, unfortunately, right now, there's running rampant the whole, like, well, Yeshua isn't Mashiach, and it's like, there's been questions on where does Camp Yeshua stand on that? Where does youth camp stand on that in general? And it's like, hello, the name of the camp is Camp Yeshua.
Camp Yeshua, seriously.
Don't even get me started. Yeah. Oh man.
And this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. It wasn't meant to be divisive. But
no, we got you.
At the end of the day, Camp Yeshua is just one piece of the puzzle, and we're raising a generation right now from a guy who came out of many different Christian denominations and being the grandfather, I guess, of this interview. We're raising a generation of kids who are basically set up in an environment where they're all preachers' kids, because no longer is it just where you have like
true.
1,000 people who go into a church and there's one pastor who happens to have some kids and whatever. No, every kid for the most part who comes to Camp Yeshua, who goes to most of these congregations, their dad is teaching them or their mother is teaching them in their home as well. And so don't think that we're not prone in this movement to have kids then turn around and say, well, my dad just read this in the Torah portion and I saw him do something that was contrary to that, so I don't believe it. No, it's running rampant.
That's even, the last night of camp this year, like we heard so many testimonies of these kids that, the Lord delivered them from these things. And a lot of the things that they confessed and that they admitted to were things that you don't think would happen in the movement. I mean, there was, kids that were suffering with home issues, with daddy issues, with, there was a couple of kids that were suffering from suicidal thoughts. And like, these are things that you don't really think about that would happen in our movement.
In a Torah observant home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
as long as our focus is on things is on the things that really are not salvation issues, like how to pronounce it. As long as our as long as our focus remains on that thing, which I noticed, and I'm so encouraged that we're coming out of this. But until our focus is wholly and completely on Yeshua, those things will still stand.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's time for us to break those curses.
It is.
That was part of the fire before us, and even the theme for next year and Change the World. Look, we don't come up with themes and lesson plans just to tickle the ears or just for the sake of coming up with that. This is a step-by-step process to help enable the teens in this environment. And look, we only get teens for 1 week.
Yeah.
We're only given the blessing and the honor to serve them for 1 week. But our goal, I think, at that point in time is to build them up and help them to understand that you cannot be honoring the Father if you're not honoring your home, if you're not honoring the local congregation, if you're constantly at odds over some of the smallest, most trivial things that are there, and that's what you're focused on. Well, you're going to live a life of divisiveness, and we're going to see the same things that we see run rampant on Facebook every single day, which is just somebody wants to pick a fight over something. Camp Yeshua doesn't have that. Those kids don't come in wanting to pick a fight on anything.
Yeah.
They want to be healed. They want to be restored. They want to They want to devote their life to Yeshua. And how do we do that?
Yeah. Amen.
How do we do that?
I a lot of times, people are looking at the downside and real negative. But let me tell you, I mean, looking at, getting to be a part of Messiah West Coast and then here at Camp Yeshua, and then this last weekend, this is my, I've been up here in Oregon a few years now working with the youth at this conference and at the camps and things. And I think the Father, this message and this heart is really getting across to the majority of this generation. And I think the future looks really bright for this walk, and that people are waking up to that reality.
Amen.
That, Torah isn't the solution. Yeshua in your heart, the Holy Spirit inside of you, that's the solution. The Torah is just an outward sign that solution is in you. And I think it's really positive looking because, these teens are getting it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, like the very first year that I went to Camp Yeshua, like I saw all of these people, like what calendar the other person went by. They weren't worried about their theology and this and that, and like they were focused on one goal, and that was glorifying Yeshua and making him known. And that was the unifying thing with all of these kids. And like that was so amazing to see. Like, even though we've all come from different walks, we all have our own struggles, we all have our own personal beliefs, like they were able to focus on one thing, and they were able to unify themselves on that one thing, and they were able to worship, they were able to encourage each other, they were able to talk, they were able to pray for each other, they were able to minister for each other. And it didn't matter like whatever they went back home to and however they we're going to live their lives, and, maybe we're going to keep the feast like a month before you do, or whatever. Like, they were able to focus on one thing, and that was Yeshua, and that was making him known, and that was making him manifest in their lives and to the lives of those that were around them. And that is what I feel like our generation has. Like, I feel like we are the generation that is supposed to focus on Yeshua, and we are the generation that is supposed to be able to unify each other, because we have a common goal, and we know how this ends. Like, you read in the Bible, and in Revelation it says, like, at the end of times, like, they will overcome by the word of the testimony and by the blood of the Lamb.
Amen.
Yeah,
See,
you try to take the Yeshua.
No, go ahead.
I said, you try to take the Yeshua out of Camp Yeshua, the four of us are going to come and slap you upside the head. Let me tell you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Camp Yeshua is really, this is a generation that is going to overcome a lot of things. And I think, real quick, one thing that has added a lot to Camp Yeshua is the high ropes Scorth Goliath on the other side of the road. This is a very physical thing that is, it helped me conquer some fears. I know a lot of people have conquered fears of heights and of stepping out and trusting in things on that tower. And I think I think it's honestly helped a lot, as a very visual thing of conquering.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you look at it and it's like, yeah, it's an obstacle course, and like, we're going to go have fun, and we're going to see like who can conquer their fears and stuff. But I mean, if you look at it, like, I mean, you're right. Like, it definitely has a spiritual connection. Like, if the people, basically, like, every single activity, like, you have to have people around you, and the people around you are believing in you, and they're supporting you. And like,
you have to trust them.
Exactly. And if you look at that in our walk, like, that's exactly what we have to do. Like, we have to be able to have brothers and sisters around us that we know are living the same purpose that we are living.
Yeah.
And
exactly. The commonality is you don't want to end up on the ground, 30 feet below, and so you have to trust each other, and you have to focus on that common goal. And I think ultimately, through all the hustle and bustle of life, the movement, whatever, that's the thing that the youth bring. Mm-hmm. They bring the fact that, yes, there's differences between us. We don't look the same. We don't share the same thought processes on some of the minor things, but that's not the focus. The focus is not that. And that's a complete turn from a lot of the stuff that you'll see in the social media and stuff like that. That's not the focus. The focus is on what we have in common, and the differences actually make us stronger, because it helps to hold us accountable, and it helps to allow us to see different perspectives on how maybe we are supposed to walk. And it's a brilliant thing that the Father does. His plan is perfect. And so just being a part of a small piece of that, because like Chris said, like, you've got Camp Messiah West Coast. You've now got Messiah Texas. There was Camp Aliyah in Oregon last year. There's the Revive Youth. There is, let's even be honest. There's Messiah Conference. And so a lot of times we talk about just, Hebrew rootsy type of things. But at the end of the age, it's not going to be those little differences and interpretations and opinions that are going to be what defines us. It's going to be the love for Yeshua and the fact that he is our King, and there is a land that God has prepared for us, and there's a calling. And he's going to come back, and he's going to show every single one of us, no matter what side of the aisle you happen to be standing on, that we are all his people. And, I mean, seriously, we could all be from the same tribe, right? I mean, we're all from the same tribe.
Yeah.
So. Well, real quick, I just have to throw this out there because we're about to close, but I forgot to mention, I have to, Mason Clover and Elisha are going to be at a Hanukkah conference in Southern California at the Oasis Slide Session. You can find
you went for the shameless plug.
I mean, we are unashamed here, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
guys,
bravo,
thank you so much
bravo.
for being on this show. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, and bless you guys, and everyone have a great week. We will see you here next week, God willing.